In the quiet, tree-lined enclaves of suburban life, there exists an unspoken, fragile promise that childhood should be a boundless expanse of joy, and that homes, however humble, are sanctuaries against the world's insidious darkness. Maple Creek epitomized this idyll, a community where a child's laughter was a common refrain, and birthdays, especially a seventh, were sacred milestones celebrated with unadulterated whimsy and vibrant bursts of color. Who could imagine that within this meticulously crafted normalcy, a chilling vulnerability could fester, waiting for the precise moment to shatter such tender innocence? The very symbols of celebration, helium balloons, buoyant and bright, often become poignant markers, not just of happiness, but of sudden, profound absence. They float for a time, then inevitably descend, mirroring a stark reality where light can be extinguished with a cruel, inexplicable swiftness. When the vibrant spectrum of a young life so full of promise is abruptly stolen, leaving behind only an eerie, echoing silence, the questions become not just agonizing, but foundational to understanding the human capacity for darkness. Can a community ever truly reclaim its peace when the unseen predator has walked among them, leaving behind only the haunting question of how such profound joy could vanish without a trace? The Maple Creek suburb, with its impeccably manicured lawns, usually resonated with the predictable rhythm of routine life. But on this particular early summer Saturday, the Peterson home on Elm Street erupted in a vibrant spectacle celebrating Lily May's 7th birthday. The backyard had been painstakingly transformed into a whimsical Alice in Wonderland tableau by her mother Sarah. Lily, a bright-eyed girl with a cascade of fiery red curls and a wide, gap-toothed grin, darted through the festivities in her custom blue dress and white apron, a living embodiment of her favorite storybook character. Her infectious laughter, pure and light, mingled with the squeals of friends as they navigated a fantastical mushroom-shaped bouncy castle. Sarah, whose meticulous hand crafted every detail of the Wonderland theme, paused on the patio, allowing a rare moment of serene contentment to settle upon her. Oversized playing cards leaned against the ancient oak. A mismatched collection of teacups and saucers awaited the cake, and a profusion of helium balloons in cerulean blue and daffodil yellow bobbed playfully, their bright strings tethered to garden domes. Each buoyant orb seemed to hold the day's fragile joy. Mark, Lily's father, a man of quiet strength, competently managed the grill, the aroma of barbecue intertwining with freshly cut grass and the sweet promise of dessert. His usually reserved gaze softened, warmed by the sun and the innocent delight unfurling before him. Neighbors, long accustomed to the Peterson family's lively spirit, offered cordial waves from their porches. 2 doors down, Arthur Jenkins, a quiet, almost spectral figure known for his reclusive habits and occasional yard work, for Mark observed from his porch swing. His brief, almost imperceptible nod was a silent, fleeting movement on the periphery, an unremarkable presence in the otherwise cheerful tapestry of Elm Street. As dusk began to paint the sky with hues of soft lavender, and Rose, the last of Lily's friends, departed, their parting giggles fading into the twilight, Sarah and Mark, pleasantly exhausted, began the slow, familiar ritual of tidying. Lily, tired, but still humming with electric energy, helped her father collect a few errant balloons, her small hand securely nestled in his. The remnants of the celebration, a deflated yellow balloon, stubbornly clinging to the fence, a discarded party hat, were silent witnesses to a day overflowing with unmarred happiness. The Petersons lived in the secure belief that their ordinary, beautiful life was inviolable. Yet, as the final rays of sunlight disappeared, an unseen shadow coiled, transforming this vibrant memory into the harrowing prelude of an unimaginable nightmare. The dawn of Sunday typically brought a gentle stir to the Peterson household, a symphony of small feet padding down the hall and the distant clang of breakfast preparations. Yet on this particular morning, an oppressive stillness clung to the air, an unsettling absence that roused Sarah Peterson from her sleep with an abrupt, chilling jolt. The usual animated hum of the house was replaced by a profound, quiet, heavy, and expectant. Lily, a child whose boundless energy rarely permitted a lie and remained unheard. A leaden weight settled in Sarah's chest, twisting with a sickening premonition. Her initial thought, a whisper of desperate hope, suggested Lily had simply succumbed to a deeper slumber after yesterday's vibrant overstimulation. She padded softly down the hallway, the familiar floorboards beneath her bare feet creaking like discordant notes in the morning's unnerving silence. Lily's whimsical pink bedroom, still adorned with a few lingering streamers from the Alice in Wonderland festivities, was undeniably empty. The themed duvet lay undisturbed, pulled back neatly, a silent testament that its small occupant had not returned. An icy wave of dread, cold and sharp, washed over Sarah, stealing her breath. Her heart began to beat a frantic, panicked rhythm against her ribs as she raced from the bathroom to the kitchen, her voice rising in pitch and urgency with each unanswered call of Lily's name. "Mark, Mark, have you seen Lily?" she cried, her voice cracking with a raw, undeniable panic that shredded the morning's quiet. Mark, still blurred by sleep, stumbled from their bedroom, his face creased with confusion. What, no, isn't she in her room? The dawning horror on his face, mirroring Sarah's escalating terror, was swift and devastating. Together they scoured the house, their movements becoming increasingly desperate, their voices laced with a frantic edge that defied the early hour. Every closet door was flung open, every corner peered into every potential hiding spot, checked and rechecked with burgeoning despair. Ethan, roused by the commotion, emerged his usual morning grumbles, replaced by wide-eyed apprehension. He joined the frantic search, checking his sister's favorite nooks under her bed, behind the curtains, calling her name in a small, uncertain voice. The front door remained securely locked, as did all the windows. The house itself offered no obvious breach. However, a single anomaly presented itself. The back door leading to the yard where yesterday's festivities had taken place stood unlatched, slightly ajar, as if someone had departed in haste or, far more chillingly, had gained silent entry. As Mark pushed it open, his gaze fell upon a solitary, deflated blue balloon, one of Lily's birthday balloons, lying innocently on the back patio. Once a symbol of unadulterated joy, its string now lay tangled around a discarded party favor, an innocent object transformed into an unsettling omen. The vibrant memories of the party were swiftly eclipsed by a suffocating anxiety, a silent scream building in Sarah's throat. The Petersons, a family whose world had been vibrant moments ago, were now plunged into a terrifying void, grappling with the gut-wrenching realization that their little girl was gone. The quiet of the morning had transformed into an ominous, echoing silence, a void that resonated with the profound, terrifying truth of a life abruptly, inexplicably gone. The tranquil facade of Elm Street shattered. Patrol cars, lights flashing silently through the early morning haze, converged on the Peterson residence. Somber-faced officers of the Maple Creek Police followed their grim presence, stark against the backdrop of a home now steeped in grief. Detective Sergeant Amelia Amy Rollins, a seasoned investigator, known for both her sharp intellect and an unwavering quiet empathy, stepped onto the scene. Her face, a mask of professional gravity, held a focused resolve as she approached the distraught parents. Sarah, a trembling figure, clutched a child's worn, stuffed rabbit, its familiar softness, a stark contrast to her raw, visible terror. Mark, beside her, attempted a fade of calm that visibly fractured at the edges. "Tell me everything," Rollins stated, her voice firm but devoid of judgment, cutting through the rising tide of hysteria. The initial sweep of the house had yielded no immediate clues, no signs of forced entry, no ransom note, no indications of a struggle. Only the unlatched back door and the solitary deflated blue balloon on the patio remained as unsettling anomalies. As uniformed officers initiated a neighborhood canvass, questioning bewildered residents, Roland's attention narrowed to the Peterson property's immediate perimeter. The backyard, still littered with the benign debris of a birthday party, a discarded plastic cup here, a crumpled napkin there, now felt imbued with a palpable, chilling, sinister quality. Her gaze, sharp and practiced, swept over every inch of grass, every shrub, every shadow. It was then, as she neared the small, unassuming shed tucked away at the back of the yard, typically housing gardening tools, that a glint of color caught her attention. A cluster of bright yellow and blue helium balloons, identical to those used for Lily's party, bobbed gently against the shed's weathered side. Their strings, rather than floating freely, were tied together, forming a crude, deliberate tether. Following this improvised lead, Rollins traced the strings downwards, her breath catching in her throat as she realized their chilling destination. They were secured with a disturbingly precise knot to the tarnished, corroded handle of an old wooden basement door. Almost completely obscured by overgrown ivy, this forgotten entrance led to a small, rarely used sub-basement, an area known only to the Peterson family as a storage space for old paint cans and forgotten tools. Sarah later confirmed, her voice a shuddering whisper, that they had scarcely, if ever, accessed it. The door itself, old and weathered, lacked any proper lock, held shut only by a simple, antiquated latch. These balloons, vibrant emblems of celebration, just hours before now, served a chilling, unintended purpose, drawing the eye to a hidden darkness. Roland's experienced eye immediately registered the profound, terrifying significance of this discovery. This was no random disappearance. It was an abduction. The basement door, now spotlighted by the child's forgotten symbols, emerged as the undeniable focal point. The crime scene quickly expanded, forensic teams swarming the shed, and the basement door meticulously documenting every fiber, every print, every speck of disturbed earth. The seemingly idyllic scene had irrevocably transformed into a chilling tableau. The balloons, once harbingers of joy, had become silent witnesses, their lingering buoyancy holding a heavy, unspoken truth about the darkness that had consumed Lily Mae Peterson. The discovery of the balloons tied to the shed's basement door transformed the case instantaneously. What moments before had been a harrowing missing persons report now hardened into the grim reality of an abduction. Detective Rollins, her gaze sharpened by years of relentless experience, grasped the unforgiving mathematics of time. "We're in a vanishing window," she stressed to her team, her voice a low, urgent current propelling officers to fan out, commencing a meticulous grid search of every surrounding area. The small sub-basement beneath the shed offered a profoundly disturbing tableau. Inside, the air hung heavy and stagnant, thick with the faint, unsettling scent of damp earth and old paint. On the cold, packed dirt floor, a child's small glitter-adorned party shoe lay abandoned, a searing confirmation of Lily May's presence in this dark, confined space. Forensic technicians working with an almost surgical intensity carefully bagged the shoe along with disturbed areas of dust and soil. The notable absence of any signs of struggle within the tiny room suggested a terrifying scenario. Lily had either been taken completely by surprise or rendered unconscious before being secreted away. The basement door itself, now under the most intense scrutiny, yielded its own crucial fragments of potential evidence. Under a technician's precise illumination, faint smudges emerged on the inside of the doorframe, consistent with small fingerprints, though frustratingly indistinct for immediate identification. More significantly, embedded in the weathered wood near the archaic latch, a barely perceptible fragment of synthetic fiber was discovered. Its muted teal color nearly vanished against the dark grain, yet its presence was an undeniable whisper of illicit activity. This tiny piece of material, painstakingly collected, held immense, unspoken weight. The search expanded swiftly, extending far beyond the Peterson property lines. Canine units, their handlers, calling commands in hushed tones, swept through nearby parks and wooded areas, their initial efforts yielding no breakthroughs. Simultaneously, a neighborhood-wide canvass commenced. Officers moved door to door, their questions probing for any unusual activity, any unfamiliar vehicles, any deviation from the quiet Sunday morning routine. Back at the Peterson home, Sarah and Mark, their grief, a raw, palpable entity, desperately tried to reconstruct every detail of Lily's party, every guest, every interaction, frantically searching for a clue they might have overlooked. They recalled Arthur Jenkins, their quiet neighbor, describing him as helpful and always around, a fixture in the community, but not someone they knew intimately. Rollins made a sharp mental note, an unspoken flag raised in the burgeoning investigation. A multi-agency task force was swiftly mobilized. Resources from state police and FBI converged, analyzing phone records, social media activity, and local traffic camera footage, hoping to unearth any digital breadcrumbs. The initial hours were a whirlwind of relentless, focused activity, a desperate race against an invisible, unforgiving clock. Every officer carried the profound weight of the missing child, the image of that glittery shoe, a stark, aching reminder of the innocence they were fighting to protect. The sense of foreboding deepened with each passing minute. Every moment Lily remained unfound became a heavy burden on the collective conscience of the investigators. That critical window for recovery was rapidly closing, and the stakes could not have been higher. As immediate search efforts across Maple Creek yielded no trace of Lily, the investigation pivoted. The urgency of physical pursuit gave way to a meticulous forensic deep dive and a strategic re-evaluation of the initial crime scene. Detective Rollins, now collaborating with Detective Ben Carter, a younger investigator known for his sharp, analytical mind, meticulously scrutinized every piece of gathered evidence. The small, teal synthetic fiber, painstakingly retrieved from the weathered wood of the basement door, became a pivotal clue. It was dispatched to the state lab for urgent analysis, its unknown origin holding the key to a harrowing truth. Simultaneously, the delicate process of fingerprint analysis began. The faint smudges on the inside of the doorframe were processed with advanced techniques, but their lack of clarity made immediate identification a persistent challenge. The critical breakthrough, however, arrived from a subtle, almost imperceptible detail on the exterior of the shed's basement door. Under the piercing clarity of ultraviolet light, forensic technicians detected a faint telltale residue consistent with an adhesive substance. This indicated that something beyond the balloons had been affixed to the door and then deliberately removed. A chilling forensic theory began to solidify the method of attachment was more than a spontaneous act. It suggested calculated intent. Unlike typical homicide cases, there were no ballistics or trajectory analyses to perform. This crime was one of quiet terror, a brutal rupture in the community's sense of safety. While physical evidence was dissected in the lab, Detective Carter revisited the neighborhood canvas. He systematically re-interviewed every neighbor, probing deeper than the initial cursory questions, listening for inconsistencies, for hesitations, for the telling detail often obscured by polite platitudes. Most residents offered similar uneventful accounts: a quiet night, no unusual vehicles, no suspicious persons. Yet a peculiar pattern began to coalesce around Arthur Jenkins, the quiet neighbor living 2 doors down. Several residents mentioned that Art, typically a recluse, had been observed around the Peterson property, not just during the party, but also late Sunday morning, purportedly helping Sarah look for Lily or offering support. One elderly resident, Mrs. Henderson, a sharp-eyed witness from her living room window, recalled seeing Art meticulously cleaning the exterior of his own shed on Sunday afternoon. He was scrubbing at something on the wall, she recounted, her voice raspy with memory, real hard, like he was trying to get a stain out. This seemingly innocuous detail resonated deeply with Rollins. Why would Art, supposedly assisting in a frantic child search, be so engrossed in scrubbing his shed wall? The synthetic fiber analysis returned from the lab with disquieting speed. It was identified as a specific type of upholstery fiber, commonly found in older vehicle interiors, particularly those from the late 90s and early 2000s. Its composition was unique, featuring a rare blend of synthetic polymers. This new lead provided a tangible, if still abstract, direction. Rollins and Carter, connecting these disparate fragments, realized they had woven a disturbing link connecting the quiet neighbor, his unusual Sunday activities, and a specific type of vehicle upholstery directly to the critical basement door. The vast, perplexing puzzle of Lily Mae Peterson's disappearance was far from complete, but the chilling outline of a potential suspect, a man who had outwardly appeared harmless and helpful, now began to take terrifying shape in their minds. The investigation, no longer grasping in the dark, had found its first crucial anchor. With the definitive analysis of the teal upholstery fiber and the unsettling pattern of Arthur Jenkins' unusual post-disappearance behavior, the reserved neighbor swiftly transitioned from a person of interest to the primary suspect. Detective Rollins, her understanding of human nature sharpened by countless investigations, recognized the insidious potential of a predator in the ordinary wolf, hidden within the flock of a trusting community. A thorough background check on Jenkins revealed a largely unremarkable history, minor infractions like public intoxication and disorderly conduct, but nothing that hinted at violent or sexually predatory tendencies. He was, to all outward appearances, a creature of routine, living alone, undertaking odd jobs, often seen tending his meticulously kept, if somewhat overgrown, garden. His seemingly benign existence, however, made his sudden intense helpfulness following Lily's disappearance all the more suspicious, a jarring discord in the quiet hum of Elm Street. Rawlins and Detective Carter determined a formal interview was paramount. The deliberate choice to conduct it at the police station served to subtly strip Jenkins of the psychological comfort of his home territory. Arthur Jenkins arrived promptly projecting an air of polite cooperation, yet a persistent, nervous fidgeting of his hands betrayed a deeper churning unease. He presented himself as a concerned community member, his voice a low, somewhat monotone murmur offering practiced sympathies for the Peterson family. "It's just terrible what happened to little Lily," he offered, his gaze darting around the sterile interrogation room, avoiding sustained eye contact. Rawlins, seated across from him, maintained a calm, steady demeanor. She allowed him to speak, absorbing not just his words, but every micro-expression, every subtle shift in posture, the silent language of discomfort. Carter, a silent presence, his pen scratching diligently across his notepad, focused on documenting every detail. Rawlins began with general inquiries, his Sunday morning timeline, his interactions with the Petersons, his observations of the birthday party. Jenkins recounted a plausible narrative. He woke late, saw the commotion, offered to help search, and then, feeling he was in the way, returned home. "I cleaned up a bit, tidied my shed, just to keep busy," he added, almost as an afterthought, echoing Mrs. Henderson's earlier observation. Then Rawlins introduced the fiber, her voice still measured, devoid of accusation. "Mr. Jenkins, we found a very specific fiber on the Petersons' basement door. It's quite unique, typically found in older vehicle upholstery." Jenkins' carefully constructed composure visibly fractured. His eyes darted nervously, his hands clenching tightly under the table. "Oh, that's interesting," he stammered, his voice losing its evenness. "I drive an old Ford pickup. Maybe that's it." The information spilled out too quickly, too eagerly, a preemptive defense. Rawlins leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "And your pickup, Mr. Jenkins, does it have teal upholstery?" A bead of sweat trickled down Jenkins' temple. He paused, a long, uncomfortable silence stretching between them, thick with his internal struggle. He cleared his throat. "No, I don't think so. It's more of a gray, I believe. Or maybe brown. I don't really pay attention to the interior much." His answer was transparently evasive, starkly contradicting his initial confident offering of his truck. This blatant inconsistency, coupled with his rising nervous energy and the earlier neighbor accounts, solidified Rawlins' burgeoning suspicion into a chilling certainty. The seemingly helpful neighbor was now casting a long, malevolent shadow over the investigation, his carefully constructed persona beginning to unravel under the detective's relentless, calm scrutiny. The interview concluded with Jenkins offering to provide a DNA sample, a gesture Rawlins knew would either clear his name or, far more likely, seal his fate. Following the initial evasive interview, Arthur Jenkins, the seemingly innocuous neighbor, became the subject of intense, covert surveillance. Detectives meticulously observed his movements, his established routine, searching for any deviation, any sign he might be preparing to flee or further conceal evidence. A warrant was swiftly obtained, allowing for a forensic examination of Jenkins' older model Ford pickup truck. The interior of the truck was meticulously swept by forensic technicians. To the team's initial surprise, the primary upholstery was indeed a faded gray, just as Jenkins had claimed. However, under closer, more painstaking inspection, technicians discovered a small, almost hidden tear in the passenger seat fabric. Tucked deep within the stuffing of this torn seam, they found several more of the unique teal synthetic fibers, identical in composition and rare polymer blend to the one retrieved from the Petersons' basement door. The fibers, it turned out, were remnants of a prior short-lived custom seat cover Jenkins had used years ago, a detail he had conveniently forgotten during his interview. This discovery provided a significant, undeniable link, placing Jenkins and his vehicle definitively at the scene of Lily's abduction. Simultaneously, Jenkins' carefully constructed alibi for Sunday morning began to fray. While he had claimed to have returned home directly after offering superficial help with the search traffic camera footage from a nearby intersection, reviewed with unrelenting analysis, presented a starkly different account. It showed his truck driving away from Elm Street, not towards his residence, but in the opposite direction, towards a more remote, densely wooded area. This was approximately 45 minutes after Lily Mae Peterson was last seen. The truck reappeared on camera 3 hours later, heading back towards Maple Creek. This prolonged, unexplained absence, combined with the irrefutable presence of the fibers, began to coalesce into a deeply troubling narrative. During a second, more pointed interview confronted with the fiber evidence from his truck and the undeniable traffic camera footage, Jenkins' demeanor shifted dramatically. His calm, cooperative facade, already showing cracks, now crumbled entirely, replaced by agitated defensiveness. He initially attempted to dismiss the fiber as just a coincidence, a freak happenstance, then escalated into concocting an elaborate, increasingly improbable story about driving out to that wooded area to clear his head after the shock of Lily's disappearance. "I just needed some space," he insisted, his voice growing raspier with desperation. "I didn't do anything wrong." His new narrative was riddled with inconsistencies, his answers vague and contradictory. He could offer no coherent explanation for why he hadn't mentioned this significant excursion before, nor could he adequately account for the specific extended duration of his absence. Rollins, observing his every tremor, recognized the increasingly desperate pattern of a man building new lies upon old. The detectives knew their net was closing. Jenkins' DNA sample, previously submitted as a show of cooperation, was now being fast-tracked at the lab, a critical final piece of the puzzle yet to be revealed. The case, which had initially presented itself as a baffling mystery, shrouded in an idyllic birthday celebration, was now solidifying into a chilling portrait of a perpetrator meticulously attempting to cover his tracks. His intricate web of deceit was methodically untangled by the persistent, unyielding efforts of law enforcement. The narrative was twisting, tightening inexorably around Arthur Jenkins, the once unremarkable neighbor. The DNA results from Arthur Jenkins' sample arrived with a chilling, almost startling speed, delivering the irrefutable evidence the detectives desperately needed. A full genetic profile matched DNA found on the glitter-adorned party's shoe, recovered from the sub-basement beneath the shed. The presence of Jenkins' unique genetic material on Lily's personal item, located within that hidden, confined space, obliterated any remaining plausible alibi he might have meticulously concocted. This was the undeniable physical proof, an invisible tether, linking him directly to Lily Mae Peterson and to the last known location of her abduction. Armed with this definitive evidence, detectives Rollins and Carter initiated a third and what they both knew would be the final encounter with Arthur Jenkins. This was no longer an inquiry, it was a strategic confrontation. Jenkins entered the sterile room, his eyes wary, a flicker of raw fear replacing his previous brittle defiance. He knew instinctively that the elaborate game of deception he had played was finally irrevocably over. Rollins, her voice calm but unyielding, laid out the evidence with methodical precision. "Mr. Jenkins," she began, her words cutting through the tension, "we have your DNA. It was found on Lily Peterson's shoe inside that basement. There's no longer any denying you were with her in that space." She observed him closely as Carter, silent and steady, placed enlarged photographs of the shoe of the sub-basement interior and the lab report with its damning conclusion on the table between them. The images were stark, undeniable, leaving no room for doubt or further evasion. Jenkins' face visibly drained of color. He swallowed hard, his gaze fixed on the unforgiving linoleum floor, his usual nervous fidgeting replaced by a rigid, unsettling stillness. He offered no immediate denial, no new fabricated story. The sheer weight of the scientific evidence had finally crushed his will to deceive, silencing the torrent of his carefully spun lies. A long, heavy silence stretched in the room, punctuated only by the low hum of the ventilation system. Rollins pressed gently, her voice now a quiet probe. "What happened? Art, tell us what you did to Lily." It was then, in a barely audible whisper, that Jenkins began to speak. He didn't offer a full, remorseful confession of his own volition, but rather a fragmented, self-serving narrative riddled with implications and partial admissions that, to the trained ear, resonated with chilling culpability. He fabricated a story of Lily wandering into his yard, curious about his own basement door, a desperate, transparent lie. He mumbled that he got scared when she started crying, and that he just wanted her to be quiet. He alluded to a sudden, impulsive act, a panicked decision, but meticulously avoided specific, damning details of physical harm. "It was an accident," he mumbled, his voice rasping with what sounded like feigned remorse. "I didn't mean for anything bad to happen." His words, though evasive and crafted for self-preservation, formed an undeniable, unspoken confession. They pointed to the terrible truth: Lily had been taken, confined, and ultimately silenced. The basement door, once innocently marked by celebratory balloons, was not just the site of an abduction, but the grim threshold of a vibrant life tragically cut short. While the specific, horrifying details of her fate would only be fully revealed by further investigation, the core mystery of who had taken Lily Mae Peterson had been definitively, tragically answered. The unassuming neighbor, Arthur Jenkins, was unequivocally revealed as her perpetrator. The hallowed halls of the county courthouse, usually echoing with the mundane cadences of civil disputes, were now gripped by an unprecedented tension. The trial of Arthur Jenkins for the abduction and murder of Lily Mae Peterson had transformed into a national crucible, a somber arena where public grief met the meticulous, often clinical pursuit of justice. On the first day, a palpable silence fell as Sarah and Mark Peterson entered, their faces etched with a profound, enduring sorrow that seemed to carry the collective weight of the community. They took their seats in the front row, their somber presence a silent yet undeniably powerful demand for accountability. The prosecution, spearheaded by District Attorney Eleanor Vance, a formidable figure known for her sharp intellect and unwavering resolve, began to weave its compelling narrative. Vance, her voice clear and resonant, initiated the proceedings, not with the grim details of the crime, but with a poignant recollection of Lily Mae's vibrant 7th birthday. She painted a vivid picture of innocent celebration, the Alice in Wonderland theme, the laughter echoing through the Petersons' backyard, the bright blue and yellow balloons dancing against the summer sky. This idyllic scene, she argued, represented the last flicker of unmarred joy before an abrupt, terrifying silence descended, irrevocably transforming a child's magical day into a parent's living nightmare. The prosecution thus laid bare the profound rupture, compelling the jury to confront the emotional landscape of the Petersons' unbearable ordeal. Forensic experts then took the stand, presenting their findings with methodical, chilling clarity. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a renowned fiber analyst, meticulously detailed the discovery of the unique teal synthetic fibers. With projected images, she traced their composition to a specific type of upholstery commonly found in older vehicle interiors, definitively linking them to Jenkins' aging Ford pickup. She described how these microscopic strands had been painstakingly retrieved from the weathered wood of the Peterson sub-basement door, a silent testimony to a clandestine act. Following Dr. Reed, a DNA expert, presented the irrefutable genetic evidence, a full profile matching Arthur Jenkins' DNA found on the glitter-adorned party shoe, recovered from that same hidden confined space beneath the shed. The evidence displayed on large screens was stark, scientific, and unyielding, an invisible tether pulling Jenkins directly to Lily May and the last known moments of her freedom. Detective Sergeant Amelia Amy Rollins, composed and stoic in her uniform, then took the stand. Her testimony provided the overarching framework of the investigation, her voice measured yet carrying the inherent gravity of her experience. She walked the jury through the timeline, the initial report, the discovery of the basement door, and the chilling balloons, the painstaking evidence collection, and the progressive unraveling of Arthur Jenkins' initial facade. Rollins recounted Jenkins' inconsistent statements during interviews, his suspicious drive to a remote, wooded area captured by traffic cameras, and the eventual heartbreaking recovery of Lily's body. She maintained a professional detachment, meticulously detailing procedures and evidence, yet her carefully chosen words, her subtle inflections conveyed the profound weight of the loss and the relentless pursuit of truth that had consumed her team. The most harrowing testimony came from Dr. Arthur Bennett, the medical examiner. He presented the autopsy findings with a calm, clinical precision that barely masked the horror of his report. The evidence confirmed Lily had died from suffocation. Critically, there were no other signs of struggle or injury, a detail that quietly but powerfully corroborated Jenkins' partial self-serving confession of simply wanting to silence her. The motive, as chilling as it was, senseless, emerged as the impulsive act of a profoundly disturbed individual, one who could not tolerate the innocent noise or presence of a child, turning a fleeting moment of irritation into a monstrous, irreversible crime. The defense, led by Jenkins' public defender, Mr. Robert Gaines, diligently attempted to sow seeds of doubt. Gaines argued that the fiber could have been innocently transferred, perhaps from a prior interaction or a shared space. He contended that the DNA found on the shoe might be a secondary transfer, a microscopic anomaly rather than direct contact. He also put forth the argument that Jenkins' confession, fragmented and evasive as it was, had been coerced under immense stress and grief, painting Jenkins as a simple, confused man, easily manipulated by aggressive interrogators. Jenkins himself, on the shrewd advice of his counsel, did not take the stand, his silence a strategic void the defense hoped would prevent further self-incrimination. Throughout the meticulous presentation of evidence, Jenkins' demeanor varied in the defendant's chair. At times he appeared impassive, almost bored, as if entirely detached from the agonizing narrative unfolding around him. At others, a flicker of nervous energy, a subtle clenching of his jaw, or a sudden rigid posture betrayed the inner turmoil battling for dominance beneath his carefully constructed exterior. But the prosecution, with each successive witness, and piece of evidence systematically dismantled the defense's arguments piece by painstaking piece. The meticulous chain of custody for every exhibit, the scientific certainty of the DNA, the detailed investigative timeline, and the chilling consistency of Jenkins' evasions left no room for reasonable doubt. The story, tragic and irrefutable, unfolded in the courtroom chapter by agonizing chapter, a methodical recounting of stolen innocence and calculated deception, all meticulously building towards the inescapable conclusion of guilt. The jury, having borne the full weight of the evidence and the raw anguish presented within the courtroom, deliberated for less than a day. The swiftness of their decision in itself spoke volumes of the overwhelming, meticulously constructed case presented by the prosecution. Every piece of fiber, every fragment of DNA, every inconsistent statement had coalesced into an undeniable tapestry of guilt. As the hour approached for the verdict, an almost unbearable anticipation thickened the courtroom air. Reporters hunched over notepads, family members held their breath, and the bailiff stood with an almost unnatural stillness. Sarah clutched Mark's hand, her knuckles bone-white, her fingers interwoven tightly with his, as if anchoring herself against a gathering storm. Her gaze fixed on the door, through which the jury would emerge, was a silent, desperate plea etched onto her face, a fragile hope battling profound, corrosive fear. Mark, his broad shoulders slumped, exhaled slowly, closing his eyes for a brief, agonizing moment, steeling himself against a truth that would either bring a semblance of peace or plunge them back into the deepest abyss. Arthur Jenkins, handcuffed and flanked by his defense team, stood rigidly, his posture stiff, betraying none of the fidgeting that had defined him throughout the trial. Yet, his eyes darting between the solemn faces of the jury and the stoic, grief-stricken Petersons, held a flicker of something unreadable, perhaps a primal fear, a dawning resignation, or even a final, desperate denial clinging to the edges of his hardened soul. The foreperson, a woman with a somber, resolute expression, stood before the judge. She held the verdict form with a steady hand. "We, the jury," her voice began, clear and resonant, slicing through the suffocating silence, "find the defendant, Arthur Jenkins, guilty of the abduction and first-degree murder of Lily Mae Peterson." The words hung in the air, a pronouncement that seemed to carry the collective weight of a community's grief and its longing for justice. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery, a wave of profound relief and sorrow intertwined. A choked sob tore from Sarah's throat, deep and guttural, as she buried her face in Mark's shoulder, her body shaking with an outpouring of emotion that had been held captive for agonizing months. Mark, tears now openly streaming down his face, simply tightened his grip on his wife's hand, offering a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement that their relentless fight for Lily had found its answer. Jenkins' face in that pivotal moment remained largely impassive, a chilling mask. Only a slight, almost imperceptible tremor in his jaw betrayed the verdict's impact. The judge's gavel fell, a resounding final crack, symbolizing the irreversible end of the legal battle. The haunting question of guilt had been definitively, unequivocally answered. Weeks later, the courtroom reassembled for the sentencing phase, an equally solemn occasion focused not on guilt, but on consequence and remembrance. Here, the raw human cost of the crime was laid bare. Sarah Peterson, her voice trembling at first, yet infused with a raw, unyielding power, delivered a victim impact statement that tore at the heart of everyone present. It was a mother's undying love forged in the crucible of unimaginable loss, now transformed into a fierce, unwavering demand for justice. Lily was light. She began, her eyes burning with unshed tears, yet fixed directly on Arthur Jenkins, who sat impassive just feet away. Pure, unadulterated light. A burst of color in our quiet lives. You extinguished that light, Arthur. You stole her laughter, her dreams, her future. You stole every Christmas morning, every scraped knee, every clumsy drawing she would have brought home. You ripped a hole in our family, a wound that can never truly be mended. There's an empty chair at our dinner table, an untouched bedroom filled with toys that will never feel her touch. There's a relentless, suffocating silence where her bright voice used to be. That silence, Arthur, is your legacy to us. She paused, her breath catching, but her gaze never wavered from Jenkins. But that is not her legacy. Her legacy will be a light. You must never again walk among us, she concluded, her voice rising with a final heartbreaking strength that defied her physical trembling. You must never be allowed to harm another innocent soul. Lily Mae Peterson deserved so much more than what you took from her. During Sarah's searing statement, Jenkins uncharacteristically shed a few tears. His head bowed, shoulders shaking subtly. It was a performative display, a fleeting attempt at remorse that many in the courtroom, including Detective Rawlins, who watched him with a seasoned, cynical eye, found utterly disingenuous, ringing hollow in the face of the mother's genuine anguish. His tears felt like another carefully crafted lie. The judge, visibly moved by Sarah's profound sorrow and unwavering strength, delivered the sentence with solemn finality. Arthur Jenkins was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would spend the remainder of his days behind bars, forever removed from the society he had so cruelly violated. While the verdict brought a measure of legal closure, it could never truly mend the profound rupture in the Peterson family's lives. The echoes of loss would forever resonate in their hearts, a somber melody played against the ghost of birthday balloons and the grim memory of a forgotten basement door. Years passed, a quiet succession of seasons that subtly yet irrevocably reshaped the landscape of Maple Creek. The vibrant memory of Lily Mae Peterson and the searing horror of her abduction remained a deep, unhealing wound etched into the town's shared history. The Peterson home, once a beacon of joyful childhood, slowly adapted to a new, muted reality. The cheerful echoes that once filled its rooms gave way to a profound, pervasive quiet, a constant testament to the life tragically stolen. Sarah and Mark, forever fractured by their devastating loss, found a fragile, hard-won solace, not in forgetting, but in unwavering remembrance and fierce advocacy. Their grief, raw and consuming, in the immediate aftermath, gradually channeled itself into purpose. They established the Lily's Light Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to child safety and supporting other families navigating the unimaginable agony of missing children. This was more than merely a charity. It became a living memorial, a desperate, tireless effort to transform their personal tragedy into a protective shield for others. Sarah, once overwhelmed by debilitating sorrow, now moved with a quiet, determined strength. She spoke at community gatherings, her voice, though often still trembling, carrying the raw power of a mother's experience, educating parents on vigilance, on the insidious nature of lurking dangers, and on the critical importance of early response in abduction cases. mark his quiet resolve, now tempered by a profound sadness, meticulously managed the operational side of the foundation, ensuring their efforts were practical, impactful, and enduring. Through Lily's light, they found not the elusive ghost of closure, but rather a profound meaning in their enduring pain, a way to keep Lily's memory alive as a persistent force for good. Their son, Ethan, now older, carried his sister's absence like a silent, heavy shroud draped across his youth. He matured in the quiet aftermath, witnessing his parents' struggle and their eventual pivot towards advocacy. The once boisterous home evolved into a sanctuary of somber reflection, shaping him into a thoughtful, quietly driven young man. Though he pursued his own path, eventually leaving for college, the lessons of loss and resilience ingrained in him were indelible. He carried Lily's memory, not as an oppressive burden, but as a subtle guiding light, a constant reminder of joy's fragility and the enduring strength of familial love. He visited the foundation, often offering his time a silent pillar of support for his parents' tireless work. Detective Sergeant Amelia Rowlands, her professional journey forever marked by the indelible imprint of Lily Peterson's case, continued her tireless work, eventually rising through the ranks to captain. The investigation, with its chilling unraveling of Arthur Jenkins' hidden depravity, reinforced her profound conviction that every victim deserved a voice, every shadow demanded illumination. The vanishing window of those critical early hours, the heart-wrenching image of Lily's glittery shoe and Sarah's raw cry for justice became permanent fixtures in her professional memory. They fueled her resolve, sharpening her instincts, and making her an even more formidable, empathetic advocate for victims and their families. She understood with a depth few could grasp the true cost of human evil, and her dedication became a quiet, relentless force against it. Arthur Jenkins, meanwhile, receded from public consciousness, a forgotten monster confined within the stark, unforgiving walls of a maximum security prison. He became a name invoked only in hushed, cautionary tones, a grim testament to the darkness that can hide in plain sight. He remained unrepentant to the end, never offering a full, genuine confession, never truly elucidating the senseless, impulsive act that extinguished Lily's vibrant life. The precise details of his monstrous crime, the true depths of his depravity, remained forever shrouded in his depraved, unyielding silence, a chilling void that underscored the incomprehensible nature of pure evil. Each year, on what would have been Lily's birthday, the Peterson family, often joined by close friends and members of the Maple Creek community, would gather. In a ritual born of both sorrow and enduring love, they released a cluster of bright blue and yellow balloons into the sky. They watched them drift upwards, ascending higher and higher, until they became mere specks against the vastness, a quiet vigil, a poignant acknowledgement of the joy that had been stolen and the hope that still transcended grief. The small sub-basement door, once a symbol of unspeakable horror, was eventually sealed with concrete, buried and transformed beneath a small memorial garden of pristine white roses. It became a place of quiet beauty, reclaiming a space of profound darkness, a living testament to remembrance. The incident irrevocably reshaped Maple Creek, fostering a heightened, almost hypervigilance among its residents. Children were watched more closely, doors locked more securely, and the unspoken understanding of the darkness that could lurk just beyond the periphery became a permanent, sobering aspect of the town's collective psyche. A profound appreciation for the fragility of peace settled upon the community, a shared awareness that innocence once lost could never be truly reclaimed, only cherished in memory. The boundless spectrum of human experience, capable of both incandescent light and profound shadow, often conceals within its most innocuous corners the transformative power of sorrow. Such tragedies, stark in their finality, do not merely end a single life. They irrevocably alter the landscape of the living, leaving behind not just an aching absence, but an enduring testament to the love that remains forever seeking solace in the quiet dignity of memory. Though Lily Mae Peterson's joyful laughter no longer echoed through Elm Street, her spirit carried by the enduring love of her family and the quiet resolve of those who sought justice remained a beacon. Like a single hopeful balloon ascending against a boundless sky, it was a timeless reminder that even in the deepest shadows, the light of remembrance continues to rise. While stolen innocence leaves an eternal scar, the relentless pursuit of justice ensures its memory burns as an unyielding light. If the profound pursuit of justice in the face of stolen innocence and the chilling truth of shadows lingering in seemingly ordinary places compel you, then subscribe to Shadow Files for more in-depth true crime investigations. Don't forget to subscribe to Shadow Files and hit the notification bell